I've noticed something change over the last few weeks. The vibes. There has been a vibe shift towards Mythic Plus. It's kind of changed. It seems that people think Blizzard are finally understanding Mythic Plus. It seems that years and years of stubbornness have slowly melted away, and we are now getting what some people actually are calling the best season of Mythic Plus to date. But while vibes are one thing, they're just an indication that research needs to be done. So today, I'm not coming at you with vibes. I'm coming at you with numbers and facts. We've also got to talk a bit about gearing up, because I've got a best-in-slot IRL upgrade. It's today's sponsor, Henson Shaving, because with them, you will get a better shave, and you will spend between $3 and $5 a year on blade refills. Yes, between $3 and $5. It's insane. And that's because Henson are not just another cartridge brand whose MO is to hook you on wasteful plastic-filled cartridges that are stupidly expensive. So here's how I shave. This is my Henson razor. I pop the top off, I insert a blade, and then I shave. It really is as simple as that. You see, cartridge blades, right? They're expensive, so people often end up using them beyond proper sharpness. In fact, over 80% of shavers admit to knowingly shaving with a dull blade. That makes sense. I've done that. And so with Henson, the single disposable blade costs only 10 cents. It allows for a sharp blade every shave without the extra cost, and it's huge for quality of life. The Henson razor has got only one point of contact with your skin. This minimizes damage compared to dragging multiple blades across your skin. That results in significantly less irritation, razor burn, and ingrown hairs. And it's precision engineered with tight tolerances and a 30-degree angle. There's no rattle whenever you shake it about. It is a stable as hell thing to shave with, and it is super comfortable to use. Compared to Henson, cartridge razors just feel like a scam. You can visit hensonshaving.com/Bellular and use code Bellular today to get 100 free blades with your purchase. This is a map of the Theater of Pain dungeon. Specifically, it's Raider.io's heat map of player deaths from last week. Now, you see those two big red spots? That is where the most people were dying. And when they died, it was almost always to this, Dark Winds. Now take a look at this map. This map is from this week. And you might notice they're just a little bit different. This reset, Blizzard pushed a change. And in this change, they added something simple, a line. A line that shows Dark Winds' direction and width. Blizzard added that line, and look what happens per the heat map. The red spot is a hell of a lot less red. So, in very literal terms, Blizzard spotted a mechanic that was killing players, even players who had seen it more than once. They then put in some UI to make it easier to see and understand, and now it seems way fewer people are dying. In a narrow sense, you could call that a nerf, but what they really did was find a point of frustration and remove that point of frustration. Now, even if you died to Dark Winds on the first platform, like everyone seems to be doing, you can recognize and dodge it on the second one. Blizzard didn't remove the mob from the pack. They didn't remove the knockback. They didn't make it easier. They made it fair. Obviously, that does end up making it easier, but in a better way. It still lets you have the satisfaction of winning, or if you still die to it, you can at least clearly see why. That's a less frustrating experience, and when I say I think Blizzard finally get it, this is really what I mean. Just take a look at this list of nerfs that have happened over the past few weeks. Some of these are flat nerfs because Mythic Plus was just a bit too hard in general, but most of them are things like this Dark Winds change. Most of them are Blizzard specifically hitting points of friction and frustration by doing things like, say, increasing cast and travel times on important abilities and reducing one-shots. And the result is so obvious. We can literally see them on the heat maps. We can see how player deaths have changed. Blizzard are being really smart here. They are targeting frustration, but they're keeping the actual fun of Mythic Plus's challenge intact. That is the thing that they, for years, had failed at. So I'm happy to say it looks like they're beginning to succeed. The Engoodification is not just a few changes, it's all compounding stuff. So remember this season's affix changes, where there's no affixes at all until +4. So you get 2 challenging practice levels at +2 and +3 before anything more complicated shows up. Mythic Plus dungeons are also way more rewarding. More on that stuff later. Then you get 1 Xalatath affix until +7, which is where Fortified or Tyrannical comes in, and the other comes in at +10. Then, Challenger's Guile, which is the affix that added an obscenely huge penalty to deaths, well, it was moved all the way up to Mythic +12, taking the place of the old version of Guile. So basically, affixes were massively nerfed. Now, the important thing to add here is that it's not just fresh nerfs. The last part of Season 1 had huge changes that, because Season 1 was a little bit embattled, ran completely under the radar, but they do make up a huge part of why this season feels better. One of those things is rewards. You now get better gear and more of just about everything compared to a few months ago. I mean, at the start of Season 1, failing a keystone gave you 5 crests, compared to the 12 that you'd get from timing a key. And that meant that doing a harder key was actually a dumb move. Now it's different. Now the crest amount scales up with the keystone, and failing the timer simply removes 4 crests instead of a whopping 7 crests. Plus, you actually get better crests earlier. Now you get ruined from 2s and gilded from 7s. And those are very manageable difficulties, and they land pretty much perfectly where players seem to need them. Then, of course, there's gear. If you do a Mythic Plus, even a +2, you'll get hero gear in your vault. And that means if you fully gear in Delves and you don't need champion gear, doing Mythic +2s will no longer be a complete waste of your time. Then if you do want to farm hero gear, you'll need to work your way up to a +6. But that's only one additional affix and a few levels away. It's not as much. And the whole time you progress up the levels, you're getting stacks of ruined crests, pretty much maxing out your existing champion gear. It works damn well. And then of course gilded for your new hero gear, well, that's only one more affix and level away, up at +7, when before it was at +10, which comparatively was brutal. So basically, as an overall system, it kinda just works. Gearing in Mythic Plus finally makes a good degree of sense. Now you then combine that with the easiest, or perhaps just the least frustrating season yet, and it seems that Blizzard have kind of cracked the code here. That Mythic Plus really just needs to be two things. It needs to be rewarding, and it needs to be fair. As far as I can tell, they've got the former worked out, and they are well on their way to fixing up the latter. But again, let's not do vibes here. Let's take a look at some of the hard data to see if any of these vibes and intuitions are even right. Here's the one point that matters more than anything. Is Mythic Plus falling off? The answer is yes. And I know you might be thinking, what? I thought this was a positive video. Now you're back to bashing Blizzard again. You must need the ad revenue. No. Look, it's actually the case that, yeah, Mythic Plus is technically falling off a little bit. But that's fine. This actually almost always happens. What we need to actually look at is how fast it is falling off. Because we're moving from the launch season, right, when the expansion is new, to a mid-season, so they are fundamentally different. Now, that's when these 4 numbers in particular get real important. These are fall-offs of runs between weeks 1, 2, and 3 in seasons 1 and 2. And looking in, we can see that in season 1, the second week lost 13.5%, and the third lost much more, 15.6%. In season 2, we see that the fall-off is slower. It's only 12.6%, which does look tiny, but it's actually a 6% improvement. Here's the thing. That was before the nerfs. So let's talk about the nerfs, because man, they certainly have worked. This period last season saw a 15% drop off in players. This season, it's a minuscule 2.6%. That is in fact the smallest percentage drop for a week 3 ever in Mythic Plus, and by a substantial margin. The second smallest is 7.5%, which is over twice as big. The impact of these changes in the numbers has been absolutely wild. So Blizzard making these changes, even if they're not wild sweeping nerfs, is clearly bringing people back into more Mythic Plus. And even the comparison of season totals is looking real good. So season 2 started off with 17.4% less runs than before. But in week 3, right? By week 3, there's only a 11% difference from the same week in season 1. And that means that at this rate, there will soon be more weekly runs in season 2 than in season 1, because the retention is fundamentally much better now. The absolute numbers are looking good as well, by the way. We're looking at close to 2 million runs in week 3. That's actually a little bit higher than the same point in Dragonflight. And remember, back in Dragonflight, there were no delves, right? Everyone who wanted gear without raiding was forced to do Mythic Plus. Delves are a massive pressure release valve for that, especially because in Season 2, delve gear is better than ever and the delves themselves are more rewarding. That's all good, but how do we know if this has got anything to do with the dungeons being easier? Well, check this out. Success rates shot up. In week 3, 81% of keys were timed, a pretty major 3.5% higher the first week, and 6% the week after. And for what it's worth, higher success rates do tend to correlate with better seasons, more runs, and better player sentiment. Now, you may also be thinking, hang on a second, from first principles, of course the numbers are going up. We're getting better gear. There's less frustration, obviously. And yeah, good point, but there's actually more to this. So, our friend Nightstalker tracks a whole bunch of data, and his report for Icy Veins dug into success rates versus key levels. And the short version of this is that players are actually moving up to higher key levels in droves, but they're still timing more keys than before. And at the time of his report last week, over a quarter of runs were at +10s. So people are playing Mythic Plus, they are finding success, less frustration, they're getting more rewards, and they're going up those higher key levels, which I would say is all around a real big win. So the data does actually confirm the vibes. This season is much, much better. And it's not even the easiest season ever. At least not yet. Because the easiest season ever was Season 3 of Dragonflight, which was also the third biggest season. Now, it doesn't seem that this season will come close to that, but it was never going to. Delves exist. They keep people who don't want to play Mythic Plus out of the Mythic Plus pool, which actually is a good thing. It's good that these numbers are lower, if they're lower because people who don't enjoy doing Mythic Plus don't have to do it anymore. So taking those players out of the picture and then having tons of players naturally falling off after the expansion, and then still having these numbers, it actually shows that Mythic Plus may be the stickiest that it's ever been. And by sticky, I'm talking about retention. And in a game like World of Warcraft, retention is king. And once Blizzard see the positive reception and the data to support it, they will know what to do next. M+ is obviously not perfect, and Blizzard still has lots of work to do, so continually working and making life less frustrating for healers and tanks will help a hell of a lot. Then pugging is still chaos and very often a nightmare. Trying to find a key as a DPS is also still a nightmare, so solving the balance will likely have a big impact here. This season has been a huge, positive improvement already. Being a healer is a lot less stressful when people can actually see mechanics well enough to dodge them. And when Blizzard have taken the difficulty spikes that felt like mistakes more than intent and, they filed them down, that's a better healing experience. Being a tank is less stressful as well. The nerf tank busters and smoother runs mean less pressure being put on you to overpull. And of course, when you're overpulling, you're more likely to make mistakes. So this is good for the quality of everyone's play. Now, one thing that could help is some form of solo queue, but then there are genuine concerns that come with group comp at the higher levels. I mean, getting dumped into a group for a +10 without a word could just feel like you're being trolled if the comp is bad. That being said, honestly, some kind of solo queue would probably help a lot for Blizzard's numbers here, because right now pugging can be an absolute misery. Which brings me to class balance. Look, it's only fair that people want to optimize their chances of success by just waiting until they get a meta spec, in the little sign-up sheet thing. And that's fair enough. The game literally incentivizes them to do that. It's not like there's a shortage of DPS players. But it's arisen because of a problem. The game ain't balanced. Not even close. Now, that is a general problem, not specifically an M+ problem, but that being said, Blizzard should probably be more generous with buffs to the obvious underperformers. There is more to gain than there is to lose, and when you take a look at the class comp breakdowns as they shift, week after week, you can see that there's genuine problems. And another thing that would probably help is Blizzard increasing the crest cap a little bit. I mean, with more crests dropping, loads of people in our guild have found themselves capping on ruined crests before they're even doing content, and that's often in part thanks to the trading up system with old crests and then the higher drops from delves. So running Mythic Plus and getting no crests does kind of suck. Getting Valor Stones when you've really got no way to spend Valor Stones also kind of sucks. Those things just seem silly. Blizzard should really have them solved for the next season at least. But I do think we can say that at this point, Blizzard kind of knows what these problems are. I think we've just got to watch and see what they do to make this better over time, because their pattern of behavior over the last few weeks in finding the points of frustration and then filing them down so there's a smoother experience, that does actually show that they give a shit and they're willing to make changes. And that actually means I'm willing to get invested in Mythic Plus again. I think as this positive story grows, assuming Blizzard keep their eye on the ball, more people will be willing to get into Mythic Plus again. And if they can solve the pugging problem, well, then they'll truly be onto some form of winner. But for now, it's at least good that we can look at changes, we can look at the heat maps, we can look at the numbers, and we can see that what Blizzard's doing is actually having an impact. Because let me tell you, during the days of BFA, days of Shadowlands, the saddest thing was feeling like you saw so many of the problems, seeing the negative impacts of those problems, and not seeing changes, not seeing fixes. We have came a long way since then. I think the change truly is night and day. And if you want to know what's coming up next and when, check out this latest edition of the Warcraft News.